Commandant Halyburton, Marty, such a pleasure to have you here. If you could just tell us a little bit about your experience in captivity. Mainly, what was the one or takeaways from that time?
Well, I think one of the most important ones was the realization that we always had the ability to choose how we were going to react to our situation. The Vietnamese tried to tell us that they were our lords and masters, and that we had no choice, and that we were black criminals and all of this. And we rejected that, of course, and we always realized that we could choose how we were going to react to any situation. That was one thing that they could not take away from us. And so God's great gift of free will was something, I think, that allowed us to assume that position, where we always had the ability to choose how we were going to react. And that's something that's still very important in our lives today, that you can't do anything about what you have or don't have, or what you were born with or without, but you can always choose how you're going to work with what you've got.
Indeed, indeed. And there's definitely been some research done on the relationships or the bonds that can form between captors and captives. And was there any sort of bonding that had formed with your captors while you were
No, there really wasn't. I think they treated us so badly, that there was no chance that was going to happen. And in spite of the fact that they might try to be a good guy, and be a friend and be concerned about your welfare, we knew that was all just BS and was propaganda and everything. So we really built this wall up, this wall of hatred in a way. And so they could never get through that.
Sure.
Yeah.
You spoke also about forgiveness and the power of forgiveness, but initially you said that there was a lot of hatred that was like an armor to you.
Right.
What was it like making the transition from that hatred to that forgiveness?
Well, I think one of the things, a precursor to that, was our senior leaders had finally figured out how do we get beyond what's happened to us. You go through torture, you're broken. And psychologically, that was worse than the physical almost. And so their advice was you have to forgive others, and you have to forgive yourself in order to move on and to continue to resist and not give up. But it wasn't about forgiving the Vietnamese. So when I left, I realized that this hatred was so powerful and it's so corrosive to your soul that I had to get rid of that. And so when I said, I forgive you, it really was not a Christian act. It was simply self-preservation.
I see.
Since that time, I've forgiven everybody, except for two people.
Okay.
And that, that has, I think, guided our lives, ever since.
Absolutely. You can apply that to other areas. Right. Speaking of not ever giving up, for a year and a half, Marty, you were under the impression that Porter was deceased. So how would you summarize the experience that you felt and the emotions when you found out he was still alive?
I had really convinced myself that being a POW was a fate worse than death. So when I learned that Porter was a POW, I had to just sort of do a total mind switch, and that took a while.
And then for several more years while he was in captivity, you had to continue on. You were an advocate for families' rights, etc. What was it like holding on to that hope for so long?
Well, I was not alone. There were many other families. We had an organization, the National League of Families, and so we gave support to each other, and also the American government was with us every step of the way.
And have either of you found that it's been easy to relate this story to some of the current American public, considering that we're on the tail end of two pretty long and difficult wars? And what have those experiences relating to current military families been like?
Well, I have in the past worked with returning veterans, that suffer from PTSD and all kinds of other things, and try and get across that really you're in charge of your own attitude. It may take a lot of help from other people to get you to make right decisions and stick with them and all of that, but that it is possible. And so I think that therapeutically is a very important thing. Attitude towards adversity is really so important. And so I think it's applicable to guys coming back from combat now.
Have you spoken, Marty, to some other family members?
You know, not really. Here in Greensboro, it is not much of a military community, and there just has not been that opportunity.
However, you have been pretty active with the Vietnamese community, both abroad, back in Vietnam, several trips you've made, and then locally here. Can you say a little bit about that?
Yes, I began working with Vietnamese refugees here in Greensboro, and that sort of translated to working with other refugees. This country takes in more refugees than any other country, aside from places where there are refugee camps, which are usually neighboring countries. And these people come, they've suffered terrible persecution, physical abuse, and have been separated from their families, and they need a lot of support. And so I've been happy to work with some wonderful agencies and people here in Greensboro on that.
It's more than just work, too. You've opened up your homes to a lot of people. And so my final question is, what message would you have to the rest of the country in terms of lessons learned from the military experience, or particularly that of when you have to undergo the difficulty of captivity?
Well, that's kind of a hard question because it's so broad, for the country. But I say, we got to move on. We can't live in the past, and blame ourselves for things that happened so long ago. And if we can make the choices to move on, and to help one another. I think our society is in such danger of fracturing, politically, societally, racially, and every other way.
Certainly.
And that we have to realize what a wonderful place this country is, and that we all share it, and we all need to get along together to enjoy it to the fullest. And so if we can get that message across, to even a significant number, that'll, I think, maybe help.
Indeed. Thank you both for your time today.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, now,
Lord, thank you so much for this opportunity to gather together as a military community and servants to you. Thank you for blessing the Halyburtons with their incredible story of overcoming adversity and serving this country in some of the most unique ways, and being prepared to give the ultimate sacrifice in defense of our freedoms. We're so grateful for each day above this earth that we can share with family and friends, and please continue to bless the United States and its allies and friends around the world. We ask you these blessings in your name. Amen.